What's up, my channel community, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we'll be having a look at my horror collection. I'm not a massive horror type of guy. I mostly get recommended to watch certain ones. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So we're gonna start off with my classic horror collection. Here's the back. Here we have got Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, Mania, and House on Haunted Hill. Here's the back. Here's disc 1, and the cool thing about this is that one movie's on this side, and another movie's on that side. So there's disc 1 and disc 2. Then we got here The Last Man on Earth, Night of the Living Dead, Theater of Blood, and Horror Hotel. Here's the back. Here's disc 1 and disc 2. The Birds. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Now, I actually made this cover. We've got Jaws and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Here's Jaws and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Then we got A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors on the snapper case. Here's the back. Here's the disc. And my latest entry into my horror collection, we've got Beetlejuice 2 Film Collection. Here's the back. Here's Beetlejuice and Beetlejuice. Gremlins. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Gremlins 2, The New Batch. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Stephen King's It. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Bram Stoker's Dracula. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Blade. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Mummy Trilogy. Here's the back. Here's The Mummy, The Mummy Returns, and The Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Pitch Black. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Others. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Blade 2. Here's the back. Here's disc 1 and disc 2. Collector's 3-pack including The Hours, Cold Mountain, and The Others. Here's the back. Here's The Hours, Cold Mountain, and The Others. The Ring. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Alien vs. Predator. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Constantine. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Amityville Horror. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Reaping. Here's the back. Here's the disc. I Am Legend. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Resident Evil Extinction. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street with 2-disc special edition. Here's the back. Here's disc 1 and disc 2. Another copy of Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Twilight 2-disc special edition. Here's the back. Here's disc 1 and disc 2. The Twilight Saga New Moon. Here's the back. Here's the disc. What We Do in the Shadows. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Vampire's Assistant. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Dark Shadows. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Paranormal Activity 3. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Hunger Games. Here's the back. Here's disc 1 and disc 2. Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Hunger Games Catching Fire. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. Here's the back. Here's the disc. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. Here's the back. Here's the disc. Alien Convergence. Here's the back. Here's the disc. And to end off this video, we have got the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2 on Blu-ray. Here's the back. Here's the Blu-ray. Also, make sure to check my main channel out. It's called Unchantable. I'll see if I can leave a link in the description. I'm going to be posting a cool Halloween video. Talk to you all in the next video. Peace!